Hey, sorry, we'll normally start like right on time. Um, that's the precedent I like to set, but I'm not going to be able to achieve it today just because I think everyone's getting situated with the new link.
I think it was a little confusing because there was a Google Meet link and a Teams link in the email that I got to. So I joined both. I wasn't sure which one it was, and it looks like maybe other people are in Teams.
Yeah, okay, interesting.
Yeah, I joined both as well.
Okay, all right. I think that is probably everybody. Okay, sorry we're starting late. And congratulations for making it to module 2. I think everyone from module 1 should be here, so that's awesome. Congrats for making it here and for continuing your coding journey. So we have some new people starting for just like they didn't do module 1, they wanted to jump in module 2. So there should be some new faces on here, and that means that you're going to need to, some teams are going to need to adopt people. So if you are new for this module, we always have people introduce themselves and kind of give a little bit of their background. Sorry to put you on the spot, but OK Coders, like one of the main benefits is the connection and the community and the support you can have from other people that are learning the same stuff as you. And so we really value that at OK Coders. So if you are new, please volunteer to speak up and just say your name and just like kind of why you're doing this and what your current background is in terms of what you're doing currently, and maybe how much exposure you've had to development, if any. Most people haven't had any exposure before, so that's totally fine. So who is brave enough to go first? Thank you, Amanda. Please go ahead.
My name is Amanda. I have a little bit of background in coding. I took, as part of the Last Mile program, I completed track 1, which was your basic HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, JavaScript, up to a little bit of intermittent JavaScript. I'm currently one of the academic support reps in our apprenticeship with the Last Mile. So that just means like when the students have problems, they come up with something in any of their code or have questions, they send the help desk a ticket. Sometimes we do live help. So that's what I have going on right now. And I wanted to do a full stack coding camp. So here I am.
Welcome. Okay, and which team is jumping at the bit to adopt Amanda?
Worldwide, I can't remember. Worldwide Finance. What was her name again? We'll take her.
Prestige Worldwide.
Prestige
Right.
Worldwide. There we go.
Cool. Amanda, are you in Slack?
I am.
Okay.
I can add her.
Thank you. Read my mind. Okay, well, welcome, Amanda. We're glad to have you. All right, who's next? Ryan?
Hey, I'm Ryan Barnes. I started working on it in December or January through Treehouse, and I am got a few projects up on GitHub and stuff, and I'm kind of in the early JavaScript plus learning some frameworks in CSS. So I think I just finished a Tailwind project today. So I'm excited to learn and hopefully pair this along with the Treehouse stuff and get going. I'm glad to meet you guys.
Likewise. Welcome, Ryan. Okay, and which team is jumping at the bit for Ryan?
The Lemurs.
Way to go, Lemurs. All right. Shanda, did I say that right? Please go ahead. You're muted.
Of course, it wouldn't be a Zoom meeting if someone didn't do that.
Yeah.
So I started coding several years ago. I started out with C# and took several classes in that all the way through like the advanced class. I currently can not write probably a single line of C#. From there, I went on to the web developer program at Francis Tuttle and completed the backend web development. I mostly work with like PHP and some JavaScript, but not much. So I decided to join this to kind of get a little bit more familiar with JavaScript and I just miss working with other developers. So, you know, that as well. So.
Awesome. Well, welcome to you as well. I currently do a lot of C#, and it's a lot like, it's not that different than a typed version of JavaScript called TypeScript. So yeah, cool. Welcome. And there's only 3 teams, so you're on Team Slytherin. And so we'll get you added to that team in Slack. So just, I didn't give much information about the teams, but basically we just have the class divided into 3 teams, and that's just your kind of smaller cohort of people learning along with you that you can kind of communicate with and have some good support. All right. Natasha, yeah, go ahead.
Hey everybody, my name is Natasha Martin. I am the marketing automation manager for Love's Corporate in Oklahoma City. And so I've been developing for probably about 10 years. Shanda is my sister. Yeah. And so we actually both took the web development program at Francis Tuttle. And we manage the Salesforce Marketing Cloud platform for Love's. And so the languages that we use in that, one is proprietary to the platform. It's called AmpScript. And then we do use some server-side JavaScript. I still get to occasionally code But I'm training two new developers on my team. And so it's more a lot of troubleshooting other people's code and a lot of API errors these days because we have a lot of integrated campaigns. So I wanted to just revisit the full stack development and some of the things that I don't get to work with anymore, just to make sure that I'm kind of keeping those skills up to date. So looking forward to it. And I've actually taken an OK Coders class before too. So Philip, what is it? Philip, is that what his name was that used to teach?
Phil Dow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was.
That's actually what I was going to say. I thought I recognized you from that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did not pick up on YouTubing Sisters.
Yep, we are.
Yeah.
I also did the product development one that they did last year too. So
Sweet. Cool. Well, welcome. I think we'll just go round robin. So you'll be on worldwide. We'll separate the sisters. All right. Do we have anybody else?
that makes the competition more fun, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Is that everybody new? Okay, great. Well, again, welcome. And yeah, so some of you joining, I think, have a little bit more background than like on average we have for the people that started Module 1. So just keep in mind kind of the pace we're trying to go at is with that in mind. And so I think I think this module might be a little bit slow for you all, but it'll get a lot faster, I think, this next module. But starting from the basics is always good. So hopefully you guys will have a good time. Okay, so the pre-work was just to read some introductory articles just to get kind of a mental model of the context of JavaScript. So hopefully you all did that. I don't expect you to have like fully grasped everything you read though. It was more just to kind of get the gears turning. There's stuff in those articles that like will take us the entire OK Coders course to cover. So like some of the code snippets and things in there weren't meant to necessarily make sense to you quite yet. But hopefully just there was a good intro to just some of the context of, what is JavaScript and why do we need it? So we'll talk about that and any questions you guys have related to that article. But first, I want to kind of talk about the structure of this class. We're constantly tweaking how we do classes at OK Coders. So typically every time we do a new sequence of modules, we're trying to do a few things differently. So we're totally open to feedback and kind of tweaking to make it more impactful and effective for you all. The way that I am going to try and run the classes this time is basically there's the free code camp material that we'll be following along with. And before class, you guys should have done that material. So if you want to get value, or if you want to get the most value, you want to have that material done before class. So there was none of that material for this class. It was just the 2 articles for this class, but for Saturday's class, you'll want to have done the free code camp materials that I'll send in the channel for homework. And so you want to read that, and you want to make sure you're always doing that before class. During class, I will basically, because what I think the free code camp material doesn't do super well is like provide real world examples. So I'll be taking like what you learned in free code camp and just trying to kind of show you an actual like use case of what you just learned, or like at least sort of like a real world context of that information that you learned. So we'll do that, and then you'll want to try and take exactly what we did in class and just like play with it and tweak it and try to extend it a little bit. Like, so if like today we'll be looking at taking the portfolio that we had at the end of the last module, which had like your resume and like your projects you've worked on, and then it had like a contact me section, and the contact me section didn't do anything. So what we'll do if we have time at the end of this class is just make that a little bit closer to actually working. Like if you actually put in information and like have that, like your contact information, have that go somewhere. So we'll start doing that. And what you would want to do is, you know, look at that again and then try to add like another field to it, or try to just change it in some way, or try to break it in some way. Like you just want to get your hands dirty with the stuff that we're learning. So free cooking material, and then you see a real world application, and then you just try to play with, break, extend that real world application. And I think if you follow that recipe, I think hopefully you'll learn really quickly and stay engaged, and kind of you won't fall behind. Okay. All right. So the article. Is there any questions or any things that you all found confusing that you want to talk about right away? Okay. So JavaScript, why do we need it? What is it for? Sorry about my dogs. So does anybody know like why do we need JavaScript? Is anybody brave to give an answer?
To make websites interactive.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So to make websites dynamic or interactive. And like, does anybody have like an example of a scenario of what makes a website interactive? Or like why the sites that we've built in HTML and CSS haven't been interactive?
Like, for example, if you need to like click on something to make something else happen.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, just right there, just like clicking on something, like most of the stuff in the first module we did, if you clicked on it, it didn't do anything, right? And so, yeah, typically clicking on something is going to either submit information that you've typed into the page, or potentially, you know, change the way that the page looks. So yeah, I mean, if you think about any website that you go to, like you are typically doing a lot of things to that website. Like you are typing in information, and you are clicking, and you are dragging, and all of those interactions need some sort of there needs to be some sort of piece that we haven't seen quite yet to be able to handle that and store that information and do something with those interactions. And so that piece is JavaScript. Yeah, so there's sort of two big things that JavaScript on the front end solves, which is receiving information from people and doing something with it, whether that be something you typed or something you clicked on. And then if you think about any website you go to, it is specific to you. So JavaScript also, like you log into a website, right? And your name is on the website, and the posts that you've created are on the website. So like the JavaScript also makes it so that the page content, like what you actually see, is different for every person. So Wikipedia is sort of the same for every person, right? So like Wikipedia can be just a static website. It's not, but like it almost can be. But Facebook and all these other social websites, they're dynamic. And so JavaScript has a big part to play in like dynamically creating HTML and CSS that you see on the page. Okay. Any questions about that? Again, I encourage, like, you don't even have to raise your hand or anything. Like, just like, if it, like, speaking up and just like saying like, oh, I don't know, or that's weird, or yeah, I do have a question. Like, it really does help everybody, not just you, because everybody's, you know, learning the same stuff. And I know it's like embarrassing to make it seem like you don't know something, but like all of us don't know anything. So, all right. So let me share my screen. Okay, how's this? Can you guys see this okay? Okay.
That looks good.
All right. All right, so I think I want to pull up. Yeah, okay. So the last time, so the last class you guys had, you oh, phooey, it's not showing VS Code now. Okay, is that still okay? Okay. So the end of the last module, we, in day 8, you ended up making, or at least Anna has this in here, this portfolio. Oh, I just moved the wrong thing. This portfolio site. So this is a static site. Like, most stuff doesn't really do much. Like this C resume thing worked, but it was just a link to another page. Most of the other stuff isn't really hooked up. So for example, like this, you know, typing in your name and your email, that information is not being captured anywhere. And if you hit submit, I think it just sort of like, well, there is some validation happening, which the browser does automatically for you. But I think it just sort of refreshes the page currently, and then so that information is then gone. So yeah, I mean, we want to be able to take input from people and be able to do dynamic things with that content or store that content. So all of you, hopefully you all have opened the dev tools in your browser before. So you can get to the dev tools by going to the hamburger thing and then going to more tools and then developer tools. And okay, and that should pop up this window, and you most likely have dealt with the Elements tab from the last module, which lets you inspect the HTML and the CSS that's on the page. There's a bunch of other tabs, and Elements and Console and Network are like the main tabs that you'll use as a developer. So you shouldn't see all these tabs and be like, oh man, there's like all that to learn. There's 3 main tabs that we use in the developer console, or the developer tools. And console is a tab that is specific to JavaScript. So we're on this page. We loaded this page, and there was HTML and CSS that we wrote. But we can also write JavaScript, and there is like a specific JavaScript interpreter for this tab. So every web page you go to has a JavaScript environment running for whatever code you write for that page to then run on the person's computer that's looking at it. So when you open the JavaScript console on any web page, like you can go to any page. So I can go to any website and open up the developer tools and have access to any JavaScript that was running on the page. So you can actually see like, and this happens a lot, like if you go to any website and you open up the console, there's going to be like a ton of like logs and just like potentially errors and stuff like that. And you can kind of just see what's going on. And then if you want to, like, you have access to JavaScript and you can just start writing JavaScript. So I know some of you, like, you may have not done the free code camp material yet, so you maybe haven't seen much JavaScript, but like I can go ahead and just start doing JavaScript in the console here. It might be a little small. So I can go ahead and just start doing JavaScript. That's the same on this page here. So this is the page that, like, I did the live server from the project, like you've seen before, and just am locally looking at this page, and I have access to the console here. So it's the same JavaScript, but it's like two separate JavaScript runtime environments for each tab. So if we know JavaScript and we want to start adding JavaScript to this page, so we made this page and we're like, okay, like I need to hook up this form now. You need to write JavaScript to do that. And so we would add JavaScript to the code of this page. So that when we do that, we add scripts to the code we're writing to add JavaScript to the page. But you can also, like, so you can write JavaScript in like a code file, like you would your HTML or your CSS. But there's also, you can also do just like one-line JavaScript stuff in this console. And what this is called is the REPL. So you may hear that occasionally. That stands for read, evaluate, print, loop. So that's just like what's happening right here. The console is just waiting for me to type something, and then it will read it, evaluate it, print the result, and then loop back and wait for me to give it more input. But typically you won't be doing much with this console. You'll typically be just writing your JavaScript in code files. So I'm going to open up this HTML file from day 8. Now I think most people said they want to be following along typically, like with the coding that I'm doing. So if that's what you guys prefer, then that's great. And I'll try to make sure to go slow enough so that we can all do that. So if you want to do that though, you're going to need to have the main.html file from day 8. So I can, one second. So I can just post this in Slack, but I can also just show you where you can. Okay, so I just posted that main.html file in Slack. It's also the same one that is in the curriculum. So anybody that's joining for this module, all the curriculum is in this curriculum GitHub repo. There's a pin to it in Slack. And so I will update this with the curriculum as we work through it. So I am working on this day 8 main.html file here. If you want to copy that and then paste that in VS Code and then go live to have it open up. Now, a lot of the CSS and stuff like that will be broken if you only copy the HTML file, because there's other images and CSS files that are linked in. But that's not a huge deal if you don't have that. It won't hurt you for what we're trying to do today. Okay, so here's this file. And if we want to, we can add just what's called an inline script tag. So at the very end of this page, let me zoom in a little bit. At the very end of this page, we can say, all right, instead of doing HTML, let's switch to JavaScript. And so you type script. And then it gives you, if you have the HTML VS Code tools, it'll auto close that script tag for you. And so this looks just like any other HTML tag, but it's saying, hey, for anything inside these inside this tag, treat it as JavaScript. And so we can just start typing JavaScript here at this point. So we can say, var test equals 1 + 1 or something like that. And then we can do console.log test. And just to kind of explain this, if you're not familiar, so I'm just doing some math. So I'm just saying, do 1 + 1, and then I'm capturing the result of that calculation in a variable. So I'm saying I want to make a variable. I'm going to name it test, and then I'm going to assign a value to that, which is 1 + 1. So this is kind of a basic thing you'll see in JavaScript of doing some sort of evaluation on the right of the equal sign, and then the left of the equal sign is where you're kind of naming something where you want to be able to store that result and then use it later on. I then later on use that variable here and pass it to this method called console.log, which means just let me see the result in the JavaScript console. So remember when I had the developer tools that I opened up, and that was called console. So that's a reference here. That's a reference to that specific thing, the console of the browser. And it's just saying log to it. So just write to it, and then write to it the result of that calculation. So if I go back to that page, and keep in mind it auto refreshes whenever I save it, you can see that just the number 2 was printed to the console. So and you can also see that it's telling me where that came from. So it's saying, hey, in the main.html file, line 229, that's where this came from. And so if we go back to that file, we can see at line 229, we've got this console.log. And I can just have as many console.logs as I want here, just doing various things. And typically you'll see people do that. Hello world. So you can see you've got just 3 things logged to the console. And then you can see that it happens in a particular order, and the order that it happens in is the order of the code. So whenever that page is being loaded, it does all this HTML stuff first. So it kind of parses all this HTML stuff first. And then eventually at the bottom, it gets to this script tag. It then hops into there, does the calculation, assigns it to the variable, and then logs in that order. And so that's what we can see here. So that's like if you want to write JavaScript client side, you just add this script tag, and then you can start writing JavaScript. Within this script tag, you can do whatever your heart desires. So you can update the page with information. You can query the page for certain elements, and then add listeners to those elements to then do something whenever someone does something. So one thing we'll try to do during class is, like, the first thing we kind of identified we'd want to do is, okay, like we want to listen and respond when people type in this input field, and when they type in this input field, and this input field, and then we want to listen to when they click on the submit. And so in our JavaScript code, we'll say, hey, grab the name input field, and then whenever they type, assign whatever they've typed to a variable that I chose the name of. So like, just like I stored in a variable this calculation, I can store in a variable the current contents of an input field on the page. And then, so do that for name, do that for email, do that for message. And then, hey, whenever someone hits submit, run this code, and I'm going to do something with that information. So we won't, it gets pretty, like, it's pretty advanced JavaScript to do anything cool with that information. For now, we'll just be able to have it in a variable and log it and see it. But eventually, you know, most of the time you would like send that data to a backend server to do something with. Okay, so we'll do what I just described with any time we have left, and we'll pick up where we left off next class on trying to hook up these inputs. But first, I want to kind of walk through one thing that was on the pre-work reading. So here's the pre-work, and you should have gotten to this, hopefully. And you can see, like, just this innocuous, small, little JavaScript code snippet has a ton of stuff in it. Like, there's so much things, there's so many things you need to know to be able to understand what's going on here, and just this little code snippet. So like, if you guys saw this and like had no idea what you saw, like, that's okay, because there's stuff in here that, you know, it'll take a while before we cover all of it. But I want to go ahead and just walk through it, even though we're going to like cover it, you know, throughout this course. Did anybody, like, I guess, like, I think there's like 2 levels of like knowledge here, potentially. Like, potentially all of you sort of understand what happened and like what is trying to be done, but like don't like understand the full syntax. So like, you don't know, like, you know, why there's this dot here, and you don't know what the hell add event listener is, and like what is this backtick, and what is this $sign and this curly bracket, and like what is a function, and why is this const instead of var. Like, there's like so many things to learn here, but hopefully you sort of like at least understood maybe the intent. But I want to go ahead and walk through some more of the syntax. Okay, so this is JavaScript code. We could technically like copy this code and then just paste it into our script here. And that's like totally valid JavaScript. So like I could put, take what they gave you and just like paste it in here and like try to get it to work. Now it's not going to work exactly the way they set it up, because they only have like one paragraph, I'm assuming, on their document, and our document has like a ton of, I'm assuming it has a few paragraphs. Yeah, so there's a paragraph here, there's a paragraph here. So the document, like the HTML of the page that we're writing the script on, is different than the one that they wrote. But this code here is saying use the document API. So this is a word that is like a reserved or like used word in the context of this script. So like when you run a script in the browser, document is like a specific thing that the browser is providing to you. It represents like the page, the HTML page, and it has a ton of different like properties and different methods that you can call and use to query the page, like query the information that's on the page, and then update the information that's on the page. So this document keyword is very specific to what's called an API, an application programming interface, that like lets us do what our hearts desire to the page that we're running the script on. So document is that reserved keyword representing the API. And then this dot is like an accessor. So I'm saying on the document API, I want to use the query selector method. So this is a method because it's getting called with parentheses here. So when you see these parentheses, that typically, I'm looking at people, Bobby. So this is a particular method, and we are telling it some information. We're giving this method an input for what we want to pull from the page. So we're saying query the page for P tags. So this thing will go get all the P tags and then assign it to this variable for us. Now on the page that wrote this originally only had one P tag, and so this was only returning one result. And so they have that paragraph tag like represented in the code. It's like this specific like special object that also has its own properties and methods, and it's called an element. So this para variable is like an element from the page that we pulled that we can then do various things with. So we then call a method on that element, which is add event listener. And then we give a parameter to the method add event listener, which is what we want to listen to. So we want to make the page dynamic by like listening to whenever someone interacts with the page. And in this case, we're saying if someone clicks on this paragraph element, then I want to do something in response to that. And the thing in response to that is this update name function. And so this function will run whenever the click happens. And so these two lines of code would then run in response to the click every time you click it. So you click, like it's going to run this same two lines of code. And we then do another reserved special keyword called prompt, which is that annoying like pop-up thing that you may see on like a website, like at the very top, like when it's like alert, and it's like you can't do anything on the page until you click like OK. And then there's also, so that's called alert. And then there's prompt, which is like the same thing, but it has an input. And so this says prompt, and then it gives you like what it wants you to type. So like it says enter name, and then whatever you type, and then you hit OK, that then gets assigned to this variable. And then they access again this para variable and access a property on it, which is the text content. So like, what is the text content of the paragraph? And you can look at it, like you can get it or you can set it. And so in this case, it's saying, hey, make the text content of the paragraph equal to the player one, the string, like just that text, and then the variable name. So this variable is being injected into this string. So it's like you can like make, like, so with dynamic data that was typed in, you can then sort of like combine it with another string. So if someone types in, you know, my name is Zach, and then you combine it with this, it would say like player one, my name is Zach. So it's just like taking the information that's giving it to you and then sort of combining it with other text.
How come on the para text content where it says player one and then it'll insert the name, there's those slashes and it's not single or double quotes? Why can't we use those?
So these are called backticks, and you can use them, but it's basically, so like you can see there's strings in JavaScript, and you can actually use double quote or single quote, and it's still a string. So you can see up here, I used double quote, hello world, that's a string. And then here, single quote, click was used. That's still the same. It's still a string. It's the same thing. So you can it's like almost like a preference thing. Like you can pick either one, and there's not really much of a difference. The backtick is a special version that allows for the injection. So this dollar curly brace is a different, it's significant when you use backticks. And what it means is, hey, and you can actually see like the VS Code text editor is like making the color different. Like these strings are all this like salmon, I guess. I never thought about that. Like these strings are all this like salmon color. And you can see this string is mainly salmon, but then it's this blue color. And it's like that's like the text editor trying to give you a hint that like this is something different. And the different thing here is that anything inside these curly braces will be interpreted as JavaScript. And so it's like interpreting this. So it's like, oh, hey, name, I need to interpret name. What is name? Well, it's this variable that was defined right here. So let me go grab that variable and then just get the value it's holding. Okay, the value it's holding is whatever the user typed in. And so then it just returns a string, and then that whatever that string is then now just replaced right here. So like this whole thing right here becomes the contents of that variable, which is that text of whatever the person typed in.
So anytime we have to do like a text injection, we use the backticks rather than the single or double quotes.
It's the preferred method at this point. You'll also see people do, like you could have also done single or double, and then plus. Like sometimes you'll see that. It's the same thing. And that's just called string concatenation, where you're like you can just like normally you would do like 1 + 1 when you would see a plus sign, and that would do math. But if it's strings that you're doing that with, it will do concatenation of the strings. Like it'll just combine them into, like it'll take two strings and make one string. Yeah. Okay. So the thing that I thought was amazing about this article is they mention like how order matters. And so you can see like they in the article, they're like, yeah, so like order matters. So if you had done this, like if you had switched the definition of, or like whenever you assign a value to this variable para, and tried to have used it before it was defined, you would have gotten an undefined error. So like if like by switching the order of the code, it no longer works because it runs the code in order from top to bottom. And it would have gotten here and it would have been like, okay, I got to find this thing called para, but I can't find it. Like that's not defined because it's defined on the line below it. But you hopefully saw like, well, if you're saying that, then why is it okay to use update name right here when it's defined down here? And I don't think they mentioned that in the article. But what is actually happening in JavaScript is there's like a 2-pass system. It sort of like runs through once and will do certain things like set aside a spot for variables, and then it will also like it will set up the functions you define. So like it will run through this whole script, and if there's any functions, it will go ahead and define those, and then it runs through top to bottom. So that's why it's okay to use update name where it's used here, because update name is a function. And what's special about a function is that it can run like in any sort of order. Like it can just be called anywhere. And it can also be called in response to a user event, right? So I want to do something whenever someone clicks once, twice, 3 times, 50 times. And so that's what a function is for, is like to sort of like tie code to a specific event or have it be invoked based off different like at different times based off certain needs. So that's functions are a special thing where they can be called kind of from anywhere. Okay, any other questions? I love questions.
What if you're resetting the value of a variable later on? How does that impact the functionality? Because I know what we work with, it's top down. And so we could define the value of a variable at the top, and then we can do some things, and then we can use it with a new value at the bottom with AMP script. So I don't work with JavaScript enough to remember how that works.
Yeah. So if you are using a variable, you're allowed to like change the value of it later on. You can't do that with a const. So like with this para const, you can't try to assign to it again. But we used a variable up here, test. So yeah, I did var test 1 + 1 is equal to 1 + 1, and then I console logged it. And then I can do test equals hello, and then I can console.log test, and then down here I can do test equals 2 + 2, and then console.log test. So this is all valid code, though it's not really useful. No one would write this code, but it's totally valid code. And yeah, so you guys can like try to guess, like based off what I've said so far, if I run this program, like what should you see at the console? So I'll give you guys just a second to come up with your answer of like what you'd expect to see. Well, let's ignore this para stuff now. So I just what I did here was I commented that out, which means I want to leave it there, but I don't want it to be evaluated. So it's like it's not there, but it's just like there for me to like re-enable if I want to.
I'm assuming it's going to log it 3 times with the unique values but I don't know if that's right. So
Yeah. So yes, that is right. So so we'll just walk through the program. So test will be equal to 2, and then we'll log test, which will be 2. So the first thing we'll see is 2. Then we change the value of it to hello, and we log test again. So we'll see 2 and then hello. And then we'll see your first JavaScript, OK coders. And then we'll do 4 equals test. So we'll assign 4 to test, and then we'll log it. And then so we'll see 4. So we should see 4 things. 2, hello, your first JavaScript, and 4. So if we go back to that page, yeah, 2, hello, your first JavaScript, 4. And you can see like that is all happening on progressively higher numbers of the code line, right? So line 229, line 231, line 232, line 244. So like the order will be top to bottom. Now, if you're like calling functions in your code and you're like potentially running stuff in response to user input, like that code order can be different. But if it's just normal code, then it's going to be top to bottom. So what I mean by that is like if we have this event listener, and we're clicking on the screen, like line 244 would have ran, but then line 239 would have been running after it because it's responding to being the click event. Okay, so all of this was like, this is like advanced stuff. Like this is not stuff that you should like have felt like, oh, I did the pre-work, so all this should have like made sense to me. That's not the case yet. Saturday, that should be closer to the case. So like you guys will do the free code camp homework, and it's going to go over the basics. Like it's going to go over the 1+1 and assigning 1+1 to a variable, and then like doing other math stuff and doing string stuff. So it's all the free code camp stuff is basic. Today, I just wanted to give you guys some more context and just kind of setting up like where this will go and kind of what it's for. So yeah, all of this stuff is more advanced things that we'll learn, like functions we don't learn for a few weeks. So yeah, don't feel too overwhelmed. Just feel hopefully excited to learn more. Yeah. Okay, we're out of time. Any questions before we drop off? Or any more questions before we dropped off? You guys have been doing good with questions. Appreciate it. Okay, so the homework is, so I'll put the, so just to give you a quick rundown of how I typically update the curriculum. So we're in module 2, and then we just did day 1. So you would go to day 1, and then typically that will have what's called a README, and that's what's being displayed automatically here. So like in GitHub, if you're exploring around and it sees that there's a README, it just auto displays that. And so that's what's here. And oh, I think I need to push real quick. 1 second. Okay. So here you can see, here's what we did for day 1. Here's like the README and like my notes for what I wanted to go through. And then here's the homework. And so we're going through the free code camp material, and you need to do up to this one. So the one you need to get up to is finding a remainder in JavaScript. And so if you go to basic JavaScript you can see like, here's the first one, and you need to do all these all the way up to finding a remainder here. So that's what that means, like do up to this one. So start from the beginning of basic JavaScript and get up to finding a remainder, up to and including. So I will post that in Slack again. Okay, let me think if there's anything else. Okay, and then I'll just, yeah, so I'll mention, so the code stuff that I did is in this main.html. So you can see the script tag. Oh, I don't see the script tag. Oh, I did that. I did all that script stuff in like the module 1 stuff, so I'll have to copy it over and remove it. But yeah, so the stuff I just did will always be like everything we do in every class will always be in GitHub if you want to reference it later. Okay. Yeah, that's it. So we'll be in person if you would like to be on Saturday. That's not a requirement or anything. So I'll still be doing the stream and I'll still be recording class and everything. So totally up to you if you want to join us at Bison on Saturday. And we can post more details about getting there then on Saturday. Okie dokie. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
See ya.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, see you guys.
It looks like this room might get left open until we leave, so maybe we can just use this room.
Okay.
Yeah, I can. Sorry, I just read your message.
Well, we can, if this will take just a couple minutes, I can.
Sure, yeah. Do you have access to share your screen?
Yeah.
Sweet. So I think you should have gotten an email inviting you to Slack. Did you get that?
Oh, okay. Wow.
And then I'll kind of show you the important channels. There's a desktop app for Slack too that you might also want to download.
Okay.
So this just wants you to sign in with Google or whatever you are going to be using. Sweet. Okay, I just got a notification that you accepted it. Okay, so this is the desktop. I mean the browser application. It's almost exactly the same, so you can just use it here all the time. Hit that
Yeah.
Let's Do It button.
So I just got my work computer. I just got everything like up and running and stuff. So.
Gotcha. Click. I'll do this later. I don't know that this super matters. Oh, it's just for conversations and stuff. So There we go. Okay, so you'll see on I added you to 2022 Web Dev. That's kind of our classes channel.
Okay.
So anything about this class, like whenever Zach posts or anything like that, he'll post there. And then
Okay.
also Team Prestige Worldwide. They named it that. I don't know what that is. That's going to be like our kind of small group team that you can just ask any personal questions you have if you don't ask them to everybody. And so I'm a mentor, and Matt Woodruff is a mentor. He goes by Woody. And you can feel free to reach out to us anytime, and we'll help you out.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. Talk to you soon.